My name is Eli Mercer, and I was born in Bennington, Vermont, where autumn feels sharper than anywhere else I've been. The air smells like wood smoke and apples, and the hills gather fog so thick it looks like they're holding their breath. I'm 36 now, but every Halloween, I remember the things that happened when I was 17. I used to think strange meant ghosts or witches or something you could blame on stories. I learned better. Strange just means real things that don't add up until it's too late. Back then, I lived with my mom in a house near the south end of town, not far from the Walloomsac River. Our neighborhood sat close enough to downtown that you could walk to the hardware store, but far enough that streetlights got lazy. Every third one worked. It was late October 2006. Gas was still under $3, and nobody carried flashlights on their phones yet. Halloween that year landed on a Tuesday. It had been drizzling since morning, the kind of mist that didn't fall so much as hang in the air. I'd just gotten my driver's license and borrowed my mom's old Civic to meet my friends, Abby and Drew, near the old paper mill road. There was a rumor going around school that some older kids had left Jacko. Lanterns lined up along the fence there, one every 20 feet, leading to the burned-out loading dock. Someone said they were carved with initials. It sounded dumb, but we were bored. That's the thing about small towns' boredom. Makes you chase anything that might feel like a story. I got there first. The road past the mill was gravel, mostly used by locals to cut toward the bypass. The mill itself sat behind a sagging chain link fence, boarded windows staring down at the river. I parked where the pavement ended. The drizzle had turned heavier by then, fine enough to shine under the Civic's headlights. When I killed the engine, it was quiet except for the ticking of the cooling hood and the water dripping from trees. Then I noticed something, a faint orange glow up ahead. The pumpkins were really there, about a dozen of them, sitting in a rough line along the fence. Each one was carved differently, some faces, some letters. The first had an A, the next a B, and so on, until the last one, which just said, Estiope. I remember thinking someone had spent way too much time planning that. Abby's old Ford pulled up behind me, headlights cutting through mist, and Drew jumped out wearing his hoodie half zipped, hood up like always. Abby followed, shivering even though she had her jacket. Creepy, right? I said, pointing at the pumpkins. Who does this? Abby muttered. You think they're from the school? Drew shrugged. Let's see how far they go. We followed the line, our shoes crunching gravel. The pumpkins looked freshly carved, some still had the wet sheen inside. The letters kept going past, though whoever did it had added more. Dient. Then another, Turn. At that point, I thought it was probably a prank. Maybe the seniors trying to freak out underclassmen. Still, the air felt heavier. The mill loomed over us, black windows reflecting faint candlelight from the pumpkins. We reached the loading dock. A single floodlight flickered near the roof. It shouldn't have been on at all, considering the building was condemned. Abby noticed first. Someone's inside. We listened. There was a low hum, mechanical like an old compressor starting up, then cutting off. Drew laughed nervously. Probably just power left on. They never fix anything in this town. He said that, but he didn't move closer. I wanted to see anyway. Curiosity does that. It replaces fear for just long enough to make you stupid. I went ahead and tried the side gate. It wasn't locked. just tied with wire. The wire twisted loose easily. Inside the fence, the air smelled of oil and damp wood. I held up my phone for light. An old flip phone, barely bright enough to show the path. The dock door was half open, propped by a piece of rebar. Something about that bothered me.
Illy,
Abby hissed.
come on.
I'll just look, I said. 1 second. I stepped inside. The concrete floor was slick, puddled where the roof leaked. The hum started again, stronger this time, coming from deeper within. It wasn't power. It sounded like a generator. That's when I saw movement. 2 silhouettes near the back wall, both holding flashlights. They weren't kids. The beams were steady, practiced. One of them said something I couldn't hear over the hum. Then both lights turned off at once. My gut dropped. I backed out quickly, nearly slipping on the wet floor, and ducked through the fence. Abby grabbed my arm. What did you see? People, I said. Not teens. Drew frowned. Workers. There's no workers. I told him. That place has been shut down since before we were born. We didn't argue long. The sound stopped again. Then the floodlight blinked out, leaving us in total dark except for the pumpkin candles. One by one. Those flames started going out too. Not flickering out, but snuffed, like someone walking the line and covering each. We got in our cars fast. I started the Civic and reversed without even checking the mirror. Abby followed. In the rearview, I saw only 3 pumpkins still burning. Then 2. Then 1. By the time we hit the main road, nobody spoke. Later that night, around 11, I was in my room trying to shake it off. The rain had finally stopped, and the window rattled with wind. I kept thinking about those flashlights. If it had been a prank, why cut the lights? Why move toward us without sound? Around midnight, I got a text from Drew. Just one line. Did you drive by the mill again? I called him right away. He answered on the first ring, whispering. There's someone parked outside my house, he said. Same car you drive. Same color. They just turned off their lights. I told him I was home, and he cursed under his breath. Then who the hell? A knock came at my front door downstairs before he finished. I hung up, heart pounding. My mom was asleep. She worked nights at the hospital, and her car wasn't in the driveway. I waited, hoping I'd imagined it. Then the knock came again. 3 soft taps, deliberate. I didn't move, just listened. The third knock came from the back door. When I finally looked out the kitchen window, there was no car, no movement, only the wet shine of the street. The next morning, Drew's mom called mine. Someone had slashed both of Drew's tires during the night. Abby texted to say she'd found a small pumpkin on her porch. No candle, just the word, STAY. That was Halloween 2006. The police said it was probably pranksters, though they noted that the tire cuts were clean, done with a razor. They never found who did it. The mill was finally demolished 2 years later, after a fire started there. Every Halloween since, someone in town puts a single carved pumpkin near the old fence post where the gate used to be. It's never the same design, never the same handwriting. Last year the year before, Leston, and me. I still drive by sometimes. I don't stop anymore. A year passed before I talked about that night again. Halloween came around like it always does, and I told myself the pumpkins were just a local thing. Some kids keeping a weird tradition alive. The human mind will do a lot of gymnastics to call something normal. By October 2007, I was a senior at Mount Anthony High. I'd stopped hanging out with Drew as much. He transferred out mid-year after his parents split. Abby still texted me now and then, mostly about classes or homework. None of us mentioned the mill. The place was fenced off again, bigger padlocks, new warning signs. The pumpkins stopped showing up for a while. Or maybe I just didn't go looking. That fall was colder than usual. The first frost came before the leaves finished turning, so the hills looked half dead, half fire. I was working part-time at the gas station off Route 9, doing the closing shift from 6 to midnight. It wasn't bad, quiet most nights, except for truckers and a few locals. The night before Halloween, around 11, a guy came in wearing a flannel jacket and ball cap pulled low. He didn't buy anything, just walked to the window fridge, opened it, and stood there staring at the rows of bottled water like he couldn't decide. Then he shut the door and left without a word. I thought nothing of it until I noticed his hands, black with something that looked like soot. The next night, Halloween itself, I was working again. My manager had left early, and the streets were mostly empty by 9. Rain had started up again, light but steady, tapping the metal roof. I was counting change when the bell above the door jingled. It was Abby. She hadn't been by in months. She still had that calm look she always carried, the kind that made you think she'd never been scared of anything. But her eyes darted toward the window as soon as she came in. "Hey," she said softly. "You heard from Drew?" I shook my head. "Not since summer." "Why?" "He called me," she said, "an hour ago. Said someone left something on his porch again." I didn't ask what. I already knew. We stood there, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, rain sliding down the glass. Finally, she pulled her phone from her pocket and showed me a picture. A pumpkin, small, barely 6 inches across, sitting on his porch railing. The carving was shallow, jagged like done with a knife too dull. The word was remembr. "Did you go by?" I asked. She nodded. "He wasn't home. His mom said he drove to Burlington this morning. He was supposed to come back tonight." Something about that hit me wrong. Burlington's only a couple hours north, but if he'd left early, he should have been home by then. I closed the register and grabbed my jacket. "Let's go check." Abby hesitated. "You're just going to leave. It's slow," I said. "Nobody'll notice." We drove in her car, the wipers thumping a rhythm that made conversation pointless. Drew's house sat near the edge of town, past the old cemetery, where the road narrowed into forest. The streetlights ended about a quarter mile before his driveway. His car wasn't there. The porch light was off, but a faint orange glow flickered near the steps. Abby stopped breathing for a second. "It's still burning." We got out carefully. Rain hissed against the candle inside the pumpkin, almost putting it out. Up close, the carving looked worse. Rushed, uneven, the cuts frayed. I noticed something else too, streaks on the wood railing, like muddy fingerprints. "Could be him," I said, though my stomach told me it wasn't. Abby bent down. "What's that smell?" It took a moment to place it. Oil, maybe gasoline. I turned, scanning the yard. The shed door was open, swinging with the wind. Drew's mom's car sat near the house, one headlight cracked, fogged from the inside. There was no sound but the rain and that candle trying to die. We checked the shed first. Nothing but lawn tools, buckets, a rusted snowblower. I was about to close the door when Abby pointed. "Look." On the floor was a plastic bag. Inside it, a pumpkin seed packet, empty. Someone planned this, she whispered. We left fast. On the way back, she asked if we should call the police. I said not yet. Maybe Drew had just forgotten to mention he'd left the light on. But even I didn't believe it. The next morning, news spread through school before first period car had been found down near the riverbend past County Road 13. A Honda Civic. I felt the bottom drop out of my chest. It wasn't mine. It was Drew's. They said it had slid off the shoulder sometime overnight. No one was inside, and there were no signs of injury. The car wasn't even badly damaged, just resting nose, first in mud. The keys were gone. The door was open. Abby and I skipped class and drove out there. The police had already put up tape, a cruiser parked nearby. We stayed back. The only thing that stood out was a single footprint in the mud by the trunk, too deep to be fresh rainwater alone. That night, the local paper ran a short piece, local team missing after minor accident. Search ongoing. No mention of pumpkins or anything else. I barely slept. Every sound outside made me sit up. Around 3 in the morning, headlights flashed through my window. I looked out just in time to see a car idling across the street. Same model as mine. I crept downstairs. The car stayed put for maybe a minute, then drove off slow, without lights. When I stepped outside, there was something on the sidewalk by the mailbox. A pumpkin. Small. No candle this time. Just carved letters. New HY. I picked it up with shaking hands and nearly dropped it. It was warm. I didn't tell anyone. 2 days later, they found Drew. Not him, exactly. Just his jacket and phone, near the bridge north of town. The police said maybe he fell in the river. Maybe he was disoriented after the crash. They dragged the river for 3 days. Nothing. Bennington has its share of vanishings. People still talk about the Bennington Triangle. The disappearances between the 40s and 50s. I'd always thought those were just stories. Now it felt different. Not supernatural, just possible. People slip away. The woods keep secrets. After the search ended, I got a message on my phone from an unknown number. No text, just a photo, a row of pumpkins on a dark road. Their candles burned low, lighting letters that I could barely read. Zombiestories. I deleted it immediately, then threw my phone in the glove box and drove until sunrise. East, through Shaftesbury, toward Brattleboro. The roads were empty, fog spilling between trees like smoke. I told myself I'd never go near the mill again, never think about Halloween the same way. But every year since, someone still puts that one pumpkin near the old gatepost. The words change, but it's always there. The police call it vandalism. I call it memory. This year, 2023, marks 17 years since that first night. And for the first time in over a decade, I think I'm ready to go back. Not because I want answers, but because there's a part of me that's tired of running from a thing that might just be coincidence. I told Abby. We still talk, though she moved to Rutland. She told me I was out of my mind. You don't owe that place anything, she said. Let it rot. Maybe she's right. But some nights, when the fog presses against the windows, and I catch that faint scent of smoke, I can almost see the glow again. Those flickering lights in the mist, spelling words no one else should see. And maybe that's the point. Because if no one's there to remember, strange things just start over. I hadn't seen the old mill road in 17 years. The last time I drove by, the fence was gone and the town had flattened everything into an empty lot. Future development. The sign said. Nothing ever got built. just weeds, gravel, and a patch of broken concrete where the dock used to stand. But this October, something shifted. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was boredom. Or maybe the years had dulled enough of the fear that I thought I could handle what was left. It was the morning of October 30th when I decided. The leaves had already turned brittle, orange to brown, littering the curbs like paper scraps. Bennington always looks older in late fall. The colors fade fast, and even the air feels like it's running out of time. I called Abby that night. She answered on speaker, her voice echoing over kitchen noise. "You're serious about going back?" "Just want to see what's there," I said. "Nothing else." "You're out of your mind." "Probably," I said. "But you know how it is. Every Halloween I still think about it." She went quiet for a beat. "Don't go alone." I didn't promise anything. Halloween fell on a Tuesday again, same as that first time in 2006. That morning, I woke early, the town still half asleep under a low ceiling of cloud. I drove to the gas station where I used to work. It had been turned into a convenience mart now, bright signs and touchscreens, where the old cash register used to sit. The smell of coffee and diesel still hung in the air, though. Some things never really wash out. The cashier, a kid who couldn't have been more than 20, looked up when I paid. "You going out to the lot?" he asked. I paused. "What lot?" He smirked. "The old mill. Everyone goes there on Halloween. It's a thing now. People light pumpkins, take pictures. Kind of a local challenge." That caught me off guard. "A challenge?" "Yeah," he said. "Supposedly, if you line up pumpkins from the road to the back wall and spell something, you'll hear it back on the wind." I must have looked unsettled because he added, "It's just TikTok stuff, man. Kids doing dares. Right?" I said quietly. I drove out just before sunset. The sky was washed in dull amber. The kind of light that makes everything look flatter, like a faded photograph. The road leading to the old mill had cracked badly over the years. Weeds grew through the asphalt and the drainage ditch had filled with brown water. The "No TRSB SCMG" sign was gone. In its place stood a wooden post with a single small pumpkin resting on top. Uncarved, unlit. I parked nearby, left the engine running. The wind carried that same wet leaf smell I remembered too well. For a long minute, I didn't move. Then I grabbed my flashlight and stepped out. The lot looked harmless. Just empty land framed by birches, their pale trunks glowing against the dusk. I walked toward the center where the loading dock had been. The ground sloped down unevenly, and bits of old rebar stuck out like bones. I could still trace where the building's footprint had been. I stood there until the sound of gravel crunching behind me made me freeze. It was another car pulling in, headlights cutting across the field. A white pickup. The door opened, and a man stepped out, maybe mid-40s, wearing a maintenance jacket. "You shouldn't be here," he said. I turned, just looking. I used to live nearby. He studied me for a moment. "Lot's not public property. Belongs to the town still." "I know," I said. "Sorry. I'll go." He didn't move aside, though. He looked past me toward the dock area. "They still talk about what happened here," he said. "That kid who went missing." "Drew," I said quietly. He nodded. "My cousin was on the search team. Said they never found a trace." I waited, unsure what to say. He kicked at the dirt, sighing. "Every year, someone comes out to put one of those damn pumpkins up. Town takes it down the next morning. Happens again the next night. Nobody ever sees who does it. Who takes it down? I asked. Me, he said. Town maintenance. Been doing it 6 years now. There was something wary in his voice, the kind of fatigue that comes from doing a job nobody thanks you for. He looked at me again. You're not one of those YouTube kids, are you? No, I said. Just an old friend. He nodded once, satisfied, then started back toward his truck. Before he got in, he called over his shoulder. If you see anything strange, don't touch it. Last year somebody left nails inside one of those pumpkins. Kids got cut up bad. He drove off, leaving me alone again. The air turned colder fast. I could feel moisture thickening in the wind, the early hint of rain. I sat on the broken foundation, watching the light fade until the world went blue-gray. And then I saw it. A flicker of orange near the edge of the trees. A candle. I walked over slowly. It was a pumpkin, freshly carved, small and neat. The word on it was simple. H-E-R-E. I felt that familiar rush of dread, like falling before you hit the ground. My first thought was someone playing a prank. Maybe those challenge kids. But there was no sound. No giggles, no rustle of movement in the brush. Just the hiss of the candle. My hand shook a little when I reached down to blow it out. The air smelled faintly of gasoline again, though I couldn't tell from where. That's when my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. It said, STY. I turned in a slow circle, scanning the lot, empty. Another text came in, TURN. The hair on my neck lifted. I aimed my flashlight toward the road. The post where the uncarved pumpkin had been was empty now. Then, from behind me, a faint scraping sound, metal against concrete. I swung the beam toward it and caught sight of something half buried near the dock, a piece of wire, twisted into a loose knot. I recognized it instantly. The same kind of wire we'd untied 17 years ago when we entered the fence. Rusted now, but identical. My phone buzzed again. The message read, Remember. The light flickered out. Not the phone, the candle. The lot dropped into darkness. For a moment, everything inside me wanted to run, but something else held me there. Maybe stubbornness. Maybe the need to know who had kept this thing alive all these years. I switched my flashlight back on and began walking toward the road. My car was still there, headlights reflecting faintly off the wet hood. I was halfway when I noticed another light ahead, a pair of headlights rolling in from the bend. A white pickup. It slowed, stopped beside my car. I waved, thinking it was the maintenance guy again, but the driver didn't move. The engine idled. The windows were tinted too dark to see inside. Then the passenger door opened. Not the driver's, and something dropped to the ground. A pumpkin. The door shut again, and the truck reversed slowly, turning back toward town. I walked closer, feeling the weight of every step. The candle inside flickered. The carving was deep, almost carved too hard, the letters uneven but clear. ENOUGH. I stood there a long while, the wind pushing rain into my jacket, my pulse steady but cold. It felt less like a threat and more like a warning. I picked up the pumpkin, set it on the hood of my car, and blew out the candle. Then I left. When I got home, the power was out from the storm. The house was quiet except for dripping gutters. I went to bed without unpacking, but sometime after midnight I woke to the sound of a car outside. Through the curtains, I saw headlights again. This time, they didn't move. They stayed there for maybe 5 minutes before the engine cut. When I looked again, the car was gone. but something orange sat on the curb by my driveway. I didn't check until morning. It was the same pumpkin, the one I'd left on the hood, but the word had changed. Now it said, STL. I didn't sleep after that. The pumpkin sat on the porch table, candle burned down to a lake of wax. The word STEL carved deep enough that light could slip through even without flame. I stared at it until dawn washed the sky pane gray and the town woke in slow motion. Garbage trucks groaning down Main Street, dogs barking somewhere 2 blocks over. Normal sounds. It almost felt like proof that the night had exaggerated itself in my head. At 8 a.m., I made coffee and carried the pumpkin to the trash bin. When I lifted the lid, a chemical smell, sweet, sharp, rose up. Gasoline again. I froze. The pumpkin wasn't wet from rain. It was slick with something oily. I wiped my hand on my jeans and shut the lid hard. I told myself enough was enough. Someone was screwing with me. Maybe the same kids the cashier mentioned. Maybe someone who'd read about the disappearances online. I'd become a story, and stories attract scavengers. So I drove to the police station. The officer at the desk, a woman named Sergeant Lowe, was new to me but not new to Bennington. She listened without rolling her eyes, which was more than I expected. When I finished, she folded her hands. Any proof? There's a pumpkin in my bin that smells like gas. You think it's a threat? I don't know what it is. She scribbled a note, then leaned back. Lot of pranks this week. We'll send someone by. That was it. Form filled, copy stamped. She was polite, but her tone said I'd join the same list as every other Halloween complaint. I left feeling ridiculous. By noon the sky cleared. A flat blue that made the wet pavement mirror bright. I decided to track down the maintenance guy. The one who said he'd been removing the pumpkins for years. Town office said his name was Wayne Cooper, grounds and maintenance. He'd be at the transfer station that afternoon. The station sat behind the industrial park, just a wide gravel yard and the smell of diesel. Wayne was there, tightening bolts on a loader. He straightened when he saw me. Didn't expect to see you again. You told me to call if I saw anything strange. And you did. Somebody left one at my house last night. He nodded slowly. Word got around quick. Meaning, I asked. Couple other folks found pumpkins this week. Not kids. Grown men. Same kind of carving. He looked past me, squinting into sun. Someone's doing a circuit. Do you know who? Wayne wiped his hands on a rag. I got a guess. There's an old guy lives up on Harlow Hill. Name Frank Merritt. Worked security at the mill before it shut. Lost his nephew there. Kid disappeared the same year yours did. I blinked. Drew wasn't my kid. He was my friend. He shrugged. Right. Same year, though. Merritt never let it go. Used to come down every October with a lantern, just standing by the fence till sunrise. Maybe he started the pumpkins. That gave the story shape. If Merritt blamed the mill, maybe he'd turned the tragedy into ritual. But why drag others into it? Where can I find him? I asked. Wayne hesitated. Off Route 67, past the quarry. You'll see a mailbox with no name. If he's home, you'll know. It was mid-afternoon when I drove out there. The road narrowed to one lane, pines pressing close. Merritt's house sat at the end of a gravel spur, small, tilting, with a tarp for a roof patch. A rust-eaten pickup rested in weeds. I knocked. No answer. When I stepped back, a curtain moved. Then the door creaked open 3 inches. Who are you? The voice was rough, dry. My name's Eli Mercer. I'm looking for Frank Merritt. You found him. The door opened wider. He was thin, white-haired, skin weathered like bark. He studied me, then motioned inside. Don't touch anything. The living room smelled of smoke and varnish. Shelves were stacked with old binders, photos, and newspaper clippings. A dozen pumpkins lined the windowsill, uncarved, starting to rot. You know why I'm here, I said. He poured coffee into a chipped mug, sat opposite me. Everyone comes sooner or later, he murmured. Every one of you that was there, that caught me. You know about us. 3 kids at the fence. October 31st, 2006. I was working the night shift down at the water plant. Saw the glow from the hill. I called it in. Nobody came. I swallowed. So the pumpkins, that was you. He smiled faintly, no teeth showing. The first few years, yes. After that, others took over. Or something did. There's no something, I said too sharply. People are leaving them. Maybe copying you. He didn't argue. Just reached behind his chair and set a binder on the table. Inside were photographs, each one dated, each showing the same fence line I remembered, each Halloween night from 2006 onward. Every year, a new pumpkin. You think it's kids now? He asked. Look closer. The most recent photo, last year, showed a pumpkin carved with a single word. Eno-GH. I saw that one, I whispered. Merritt nodded. I stopped going out there 2 years ago. My legs gave out. But the pumpkins kept coming. I figured maybe it was the town paying respect. Respect for what? For all of them. He turned a page. Newspaper clipping, search continues for local boy, different year. Different name. Same river. How many? I asked. 6. That I know of. We sat in silence. Wind brushed the windows, a dry hiss. You're saying somebody's been marking every disappearance, I said. Maybe. Or reminding us we stopped looking. He reached into his pocket and slid something across the table. A small brass keychain shaped like a pumpkin. The metal was smooth from handling. Found that on my porch last night, he said. Didn't tell anyone. Figured you'd show up. I turned it over. Stamped on the back were 2 letters DM. Drew Mercer. My stomach twisted. His last name was Collins, I said quietly. Merritt frowned. Then I don't know whose it is. Outside, a car engine started. I looked through the window. Nothing but trees. When I turned back, Merritt was watching me with a strange calm. You should leave it alone, he said. Every year it wakes something in people. Guilt, mostly. Sometimes that's all it takes. I just wanted to stop. He gave a dry laugh. Then stopped feeding it. I left him there. Binder open on the table, steam rising from forgotten coffee. As I drove down the hill, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Giodi. I pulled over, heart thudding. Another buzz. NXT. Nothing after that. By the time I reached town, dusk had settled. I stopped at a diner to clear my head. Through the window I could see the reflection of the parking lot. Rows of cars, yellow sodium light. Rain starting again. When I looked down at my phone, a notification popped up. 1 photo received. It showed my house. Front porch. Same angle I'd used to photograph the pumpkin that morning. Only now, there were 2. When I got home, both were there. Side by side. Candles guttering in drizzle. The first still said style. The new one read white. I carried them into the yard and doused them with the hose until they hissed out, black smoke rising. For a moment, I thought that would end it. But around 11, while I was watching the news, the screen blinked. Static, just for a second, then picture returned. Behind the anchor's shoulder, through the studio window that looked onto Main Street, I saw a faint orange glow. 2 pumpkins on the curb outside the building. Bennington had 1,000 stories. It didn't need mine added. Yet somehow, every October, it kept writing another line. Morning came gray again, sky the color of paper, soaked once and left to dry. I hadn't touched my phone since that last message, but silence can feel louder than noise. I brewed coffee, watched the steam twist, and tried to convince myself the world still followed normal rules. Bills sat on the table. The fridge hummed. My shoes were still wet from last night. Ordinary proof. At 9, Sergeant Lowe knocked. She looked tired, eyes rimmed with that long shift glaze. "Mr. Mercer, you reported a trespass." 2 pumpkins on my porch. I threw them out. She nodded toward her clipboard. Town's had 6 similar calls since Sunday. Same carvings, same timing, mostly around midnight. So it's a group thing. Maybe, she said. Wood pulled a plate from security footage outside the library last night. A white pickup. Belongs to a local YouTuber. Does urban legend videos. Name's Aaron Lang. I felt my shoulders unclench a little. A prank with a face was easier to hold on to. "Mind if I ask how you're tied to this?" she said. I knew one of the boys who went missing. Drew Collins. Recognition flickered. Right, the Bennington cases. They aren't connected, I said automatically, though my voice didn't sound convinced. She tapped her pen. "Don't feed it, Mr. Mercer. That's how these things stay alive." Then she was gone. Her phrase echoed, "Don't feed it." Same as Merritt's warning. Maybe everyone who'd lived here long enough learned to say that. By afternoon I couldn't sit still. I found Aaron Lang's channel easily. Grave North Stories. His latest upload, timestamped the night before, was titled The Pumpkin Line. Inside Vermont's creepiest Halloween mystery. Thumbnail the empty lot. My lot. I hit play. Grainy night vision footage filled the screen. 2 figures moved through drizzle, their breath white ghosts in the beam of a flashlight. One laughed, nervous and high. The other said, "Camera rolling." Then they set down a small pumpkin on cracked concrete. The word carved into it glowed clear. "Dawite." My chest tightened. "You idiots," I muttered. They talked about reviving the ritual, about finishing the sequence. At the 8-minute mark, the camera jerked sideways. Someone off-screen shouted, "Truck lights!" "Go," the video cut there. Comments flooded underneath fake, staged, marketing, someone breathing behind them. I scrolled through until one stood out, user 74 North. They spelled wrong order. It should be STIL, Galur AITGOME. No likes, no replies. Account created that morning. I clicked the profile. Blank. Something cold worked up my spine. Whoever 74 North was, they knew the pattern better than the ones filming it. I opened the local news site next. Headline: 2 content creators detained for trespassing at former mill site. No charges filed. The arrest time, 3:17 a.m., lined up with the upload timestamp. They'd filmed, posted, then been caught almost instantly, which meant someone else had been there to finish their work. The footage ended too cleanly for panic. I drove to the library around 4. Outside, damp leaves pasted to the sidewalk. The air smelled like rust. A librarian I half recognized pointed me toward the newspaper archive. When I asked about missing person cases, the microfilm machine hummed as I scrolled through decades. 1978. Boy vanishes walking home from trick or treating. 1989. Teen falls in the river. Body never recovered. 2006. Drew Collins, 2013. College student disappears hiking near Glastonbury. The dates formed a near pattern. Roughly every 7 years, always scribbled them down: 1978, 1989, 2006, 2013, 2020, and now 2023. That gap, 7 years, felt too tidy for chance, too awkward for superstition. Still, coincidence builds its own rhythm if you stare long enough. When I left the library, evening had fallen hard. Streetlights blinked through mist. Across the parking lot, a white pickup idled. For a second I thought it was police surveillance, but when I squinted I saw the passenger door open. Just a crack, light spilling onto wet asphalt. A hand slid out, set something down, and withdrew. The door shut. The truck rolled away, taillights vanishing into fog. I didn't even need to walk closer to know what it was. The faint orange pulse gave it away.
Come.
I drove straight to Merritt's. He opened the door before I knocked. "I saw the video," he said. "It's spreading. You think the same person's behind it?" "No. That's the trick. People copy what they half understand. Then someone else uses their noise to cover their own." He motioned me inside and pointed at a corkboard by the window. Clippings, maps, strings, like a cliché, except everything pinned there was real. 7-year pattern, he said. I didn't see it until now. Town doesn't either. They chalk each up separate: river accident, runaway, lost hiker. But look here. He traced a line connecting the names. All families lived within 2 miles of the mill road. I leaned closer. You think it's one person? Or one idea passed down? He opened a drawer, pulled out a box of VHS tapes. Security recordings from the water plant. I kept them after I retired. Night of your Halloween, 2006. Power flickered, backup cameras kicked in. Watch. On the grainy screen, the mill fence glowed faint in floodlight. 3 small figures, us, moved toward the gate. Seconds later, a 4th shape crossed from the trees. Larger. My mouth went dry. That wasn't us. Merritt paused the tape. Never showed this to police. They'd say reflection, lens flare, whatever helped them sleep. He fast-forwarded. The larger figure lingered after we left, then turned toward the dock. The tape cut to static. When the screen cleared again, a single pumpkin sat where we'd stood. I wanted to say the recording was doctored, but Merritt didn't own the type of imagination for forgery. His expression wasn't pride. It was warning. He ejected the tape and handed it to me. You'll need proof if you want anyone to listen. But careful. Proof makes believers, and believers act. It was nearly 9 when I left. Rain had picked up again, blurring headlights into streaks. I kept checking the mirror, half expecting the pickup's beams to appear. At home, my porch was empty. No pumpkins, no messages. Relief came slow, cautious. I set the tape on the counter, made tea, and tried to breathe normally. Around midnight, thunder rolled low over the hills. I thought about calling Abby, maybe just to hear another voice. But I didn't want to drag her back into this. Instead, I loaded the tape into an old player I'd borrowed years ago. Static, then image. Fence line, 2006. The 3 of us again. The taller shape. I leaned closer, finger on pause. As the figure turned slightly, the frame froze just right to catch the side of a face. Half masked by shadow, but unmistakably human. Not monstrous. Not ghostly. Just a man wearing a maintenance jacket. My breath hitched. The same kind Wayne Cooper wore. I replayed it twice, slower each time. Same jacket. Same build. I wanted it to be coincidence. Then I remembered what Merritt had said. He'd stopped going to the lot 2 years ago. But someone else kept taking the pumpkins down. I grabbed my coat, drove back toward town through pounding rain. Wayne's truck was easy to find, parked outside the public works shed. Light glowed in the window. Inside, through the glass, I saw him hunched over a table carving. Small motions, deliberate. The orange of a pumpkin reflected off his forearms. I knocked. He looked up, startled, but not surprised. Then he smiled. Slow and tired, as if he'd been waiting. Rain hammered the tin roof of the public works shed, each drop like a nail driven into metal. Wayne didn't stand when I came in. He just wiped his hands on a rag, already streaked orange from pulp. The small pumpkin in front of him gleamed wet under a single hanging bulb. He'd carved it cleanly. No jagged edges, no trembling letters. Stop. He gestured at it with the knife. Don't worry, I'm not setting this one out. Just keeping the tradition alive. My pulse thudded in my ears. You were at the mill that night. He set the blade down carefully, like he'd expected the accusation. You saw that old tape, didn't you? I nodded. Frank never could burn his ghosts, he said. Had to keep every scrap. I saw you. After we left. I was security then, Wayne said quietly. Hired to keep people off the property. You kids weren't the first to sneak in. Usually I'd scare them off, call it in later. That night, he trailed off, rubbing a thumb along the rim of the pumpkin. That night somebody else was there too. The bulb flickered once. Who? I asked. He sighed. You want a villain. That's the easy story. But there's no one thing to hang this on. The mill was supposed to be sealed that month. New owners, cleanup crews. Local kids knew it as a dare spot. When I saw your headlights, I figured I'd scare you off before anyone got hurt. Then I saw movement behind you. Figured another trespasser. Went after him. But when I got there, he was gone. Just that line of pumpkins burning low. He leaned back, chair creaking. When the boy disappeared a few days later, people pointed at me. Figured I was on shift, maybe saw something, maybe did something. I didn't. But rumor's its own gravity. So you started cleaning them up. He nodded. Couldn't stop them coming, but I could stop the stories spreading. Until now, I said. Until now, he echoed. We sat in the smell of wet earth and rotting pumpkin. Somewhere outside, thunder rolled over the valley. Wayne's eyes flicked to the knife. These kids online. They think if they keep spelling the words, something will happen. But words don't summon anything. They just tell you who's listening. What do they mean? I asked. He gave a small shrug. Every year the carvings copy the last message from the year before. Nobody remembers where it starts. You saw the pattern because you were there at the beginning. I stared at the carved word. Stia. It's candle guttering. Then who's sending them now? He smiled without warmth. You are. I blinked. What? You went back, didn't you? Took photos? Talked to people, stirred it all up again. You think the story moves itself? He tapped the table. Every time someone remembers, it rewinds. People start seeing shadows again, carving again. You gave it air? That's not how this works. Sure it is. It's just people. But people repeat things until they forget why. He pushed the pumpkin toward me. Take it. You end it. Don't talk, don't film. Don't feed it. Lightning flashed through the high windows, and for a second his face was lit white. Behind him, I noticed shelves stacked with dozens of pumpkins, each carved with one word. Comstel, UGH, lined like archive boxes. Their candles were dead, but the smell of wax hung thick. You kept them all, I said. Someone had to, he murmured. You destroy them, you forget. You keep them, you remember. Balance, maybe. A radio crackled from the far corner. Weather alert. Monotone voice cutting through static. Flood advisory low. Lying areas. Mill Road closed. Wayne turned down the volume. Guess it's that kind of night again. He looked older suddenly, lines deepening under the thin light. I'll clean up what's left this year, he said. Then I'm done. Let the town have its ghosts. I should have left it there. But the image of Drew's empty car kept rising in my mind, headlights dimmed by mud. You said someone else was there. The night we went in. Yeah. You ever see him again? Wayne hesitated. Not since. But I think about it. How he moved, slow, careful, like he belonged there. He rubbed his jaw. Could have been another guard. Could have been no one. He stood, stretched, joints cracking. Go home, Mercer. Halloween's over in 5 hours. Let it pass. I picked up the pumpkin, heavier than it looked. What happens if I don't? He gave a dry smile. Then next year someone carves your name instead of a word. Outside, the rain had turned into sheets. I ran to my car, heart drumming. The small pumpkin tucked against my chest like contraband. By the time I reached home, the power was out again. I set the pumpkin on the counter and lit the candle with a match. The flame trembled, throwing long shadows up the wall. Stewai. The word burned into the kitchen tile. I poured whiskey, sat at the table, and replayed Wayne's story. Maybe he was telling the truth. Maybe he'd made it up to bury something worse. Either way, I realized what scared me most. Not ghosts or curses, but the way people inherit obsessions like family heirlooms. A story becomes a burden passed down, shaped to fit whoever carries it next. My phone buzzed once, then again. Unknown number. STLYTNG. My throat tightened. I typed back before I could think, who is this? No reply. I grabbed my coat and drove through the downpour toward the river. Roads gleamed under headlights, reflective and slick. Branches whipped against the windshield. The flood warning had been right. The water licked the underside of the bridge near the old mill lot. A single figure stood at the edge of the concrete, flashlight pointed into the dark current. Wayne. He turned when I stopped, rain plastering his hair to his skull. You shouldn't be here, he called over the wind. Neither should you. He nodded. Guess we both didn't listen. He pointed downriver. Something orange floated there, bobbing in the flood. A pumpkin. Candle still alive despite the rain. It bumped against the support column, then spun away. Someone's still setting them, I said. Wayne's eyes followed the current. Or the river's giving them back. He stepped closer, hand on my shoulder. Go home, Eli. Let the water take it. Let it wash the words clean. I almost believed him. But as I turned to leave, headlights broke through the rain behind us. Another vehicle crawling slow down the closed road. A white pickup. Wayne swore under his breath. Get in your car. The truck stopped 30 feet away, engine idling. The window rolled down halfway. No face. Just a gloved hand reaching out to set something on the hood. Another pumpkin. Even from where we stood, I could read the word. AGAIN. Wayne shouted, leave it, and started forward, waving his arms. The truck reversed, tires spinning water. Then turned and vanished toward town. He picked up the pumpkin, turned it once in his hands, then set it on the guardrail. "It's never gonna end, is it?" "Maybe not," I said. He exhaled, long and thin. "Then maybe we stopped chasing it. We stayed there until the candle drowned itself, leaving only the hiss of rain. When I got home, dawn was breaking pale over the hills. The phone was quiet. No new messages. The pumpkin on my counter had gone out, smoke curling up like breath in the cold room. For the first time in years, Halloween ended without another knock. But even as I washed the knife I'd used to light the wick, a thought kept circling. Wayne said people repeat what they half remember. Maybe I was just another mouth passing the story along. And maybe by telling it now, I've already carved the next word. 2 years have passed since that flood. The mill lot is gone for good now, paved over, turned into a community storage yard where people keep their boats and RVs. On clear days I drive past, not because I need to, but because the road still draws me like a low current. There's nothing left to see, no fence, no foundations, not even the concrete pad where we first saw the pumpkins. Just asphalt, smooth and ordinary. Bennington moves on quickly, or at least pretends to. Stories get folded into small talk until nobody remembers how sharp they once were. The papers called that storm the worst since 1973, and everyone blamed the water for the few wrecks that night. No one mentioned the pumpkins floating in the flood, or the white truck that vanished before sunrise. Wayne retired the following spring, sold his house, left a note on my windshield that said simply, "Don't look for me. Some work isn't meant to be finished." He didn't leave a forwarding address. For a while, the town stayed quiet. Halloween 2024 came and went without a single report of vandalism or carvings. The local Facebook page even joked about it. Guess Bennington's curse finally found peace. People like tidy endings. I almost believed it. But forgetting is a kind of erosion. It smooths the edges but leaves the shape. By this October, the edges were back. It started with a message from Abby. We hadn't spoken in months, but her text came at 10:42 p.m., October 29. Someone left something at my door. I called immediately. Her voice was calm, too calm. "It's probably nothing. Just come tomorrow." "Okay." I drove up the next morning. Her house sat off a dirt road near Rutland, small place tucked behind sugar maples. The front porch was clean except for a damp circle on the boards, like something had been there overnight. She'd already thrown it away, she said. Another pumpkin. No word this time, just a single carved line around the stem, like a mouth stitched shut. I offered to stay the night. She said no, she was fine. Maybe she was. Maybe she wanted to see if silence could end it. That evening I found myself walking downtown without really deciding to. The air smelled like cider and wet leaves. Kids in costumes darted between storefronts, parents trailing behind with flashlights. Ordinary Halloween. Yet every time I turned a corner, I half expected to see a flicker of orange waiting. I ended up at the bridge by the river, the same one where Wayne and I had stood watching the current drag the last candle away. The water was low now, stones exposed. The light from town didn't quite reach here. A man was leaning on the rail, smoking. I thought he might be a tourist. He wore a dark jacket. Jeans, nothing remarkable. When he turned slightly, I saw the town emblem stitched on the sleeve, Public Works. For a moment my heart stumbled. "Evening," he said. His voice wasn't Wayne's. Younger, smoother. "Evening," I answered. He flicked ash into the river. "Funny thing. They say this spot's haunted." "Be what?" He smiled. Depends who you ask. Some say a boy who fell in. Some say a man who watched him. Some say just stories that won't quit. He finished the cigarette and dropped it, ember hissing in the water. Happy Halloween, he said, and walked toward town. When I looked back at the rail where he'd stood, something small rested there. Round. I didn't touch it. Instead, I drove home and sat in the dark for a long time, thinking about patterns. How they don't end so much as loop quieter each time. At midnight, rain started again. I went to the kitchen for a glass of water. Through the window I saw headlights on the street, slow and deliberate. A white pickup, but newer, cleaner. It didn't stop, it just rolled past, tires whispering over wet pavement. Maybe coincidence. Maybe someone else's tradition now. The next morning I found nothing on the porch, no messages, no carvings. Just quiet. Still, I couldn't shake the thought that stories don't need their original tellers. They survive by being repeated. Half believed, half denied. A town like ours runs on them. The way a mill once ran on water. I keep the last pumpkin Wayne gave me on a shelf in the garage. The candle's long gone, but the word he carved, STI, is still readable when sunlight hits it through the window. The shell's dried to paper. Someday it'll collapse into dust. I tell myself that's how it ends, as slowly, silently, until only the memory of shape remains. But last week, while clearing leaves from the driveway, I found something near the storm drain. A seed. Pale, almost white. I don't know if pumpkins even grow from a seed that small, or if it just looked like one, because I wanted it to. I left it there. Tonight's October 31st again. I'm writing this because the air feels the same as it did that first year. Cool, metallic, waiting. The town's quiet except for a few last firecrackers, the echo of kids running home. Nothing strange. Nothing wrong. Still, I left the porch light on. And out by the curb, under that light, something's catching the glow. A round shape, faintly orange. I tell myself I'm imagining it. That it's a leaf pile or a trick of color. I don't go check. Because if it's really there, I already know what it says. And I've learned that some stories don't end when they're told. They end when you stop looking.